For more, tune into Shenmue Dojo's Shenmue Lore Investigation streams. Airing live on Shenmue Dojo's YouTube and Twitch channels every other Friday at 9 p.m. BST. Let's get sweaty.
Kowloon. It's essentially a middle city, a mini city for all intents and purposes. Yeah, I mean, look at it, man.
First time you come across the place, it's overwhelming. Nothing really prepares you for it. The noise, the smells.
Can you hear this? Okay, guys.
The fluidity and pace of life inside it.
God, imagine COVID in there.
The human side of the place kind of ran completely against its physical presence.
It started life as a squatter settlement. The individual footprint of the building, the sort of building plot, was a small little hut size. That you had these very one-room wide buildings going up 14 stories. I trained as an architect, and everything I'd been told was that you couldn't possibly squeeze this many people into this smaller space.
What was that start?
This and everything I
33,000 people, 8,800 homes. Which means to live there then, how many people per household is that? 8, 16, 24, 36. You're talking, I suppose that is quite natural, I suppose, 3 people a household. But I'm assuming these households were like proper tightly
you couldn't
packed.
Possibly squeeze this many people into this smaller space.
Look at that. So Manhattan is 27,000 people per kilometre squared. And yet here they fit 1.2 million people per kilometre squared. It's just this is mental, that, isn't it?
Imagine a vertical urban village, a lawless labyrinth where crime, commerce, and community coexisted for generations. At its peak, it was the densest place on Earth.
It just looks... It
That
looks
place
like
in Hong Kong was known as the
cans
Kowloon Walled
squashed.
City. It teetered in limbo for nearly a century, and then it was gone. But its memory and reputation live on, even 20 years later. Why is it etched so indelibly into the minds of so many?
Definitely unsafe retro. Rats. Imagine the rat problem. Oh, imagine the food situation there. Salmonella. Schools? Looks like there were schools inside there as well.
Known in Chinese as Kowloon Xingzai, sometimes Kowloon Zhaixing, actually means a walled area where there was an official, and sometimes some soldiers as well. So really is an administrative and military term.
It was sheerly by accident that the Kowloon Walled City came to be, a donut hole of Chinese sovereignty in the Crown Colony of Hong Kong. An 1898 agreement ceded what was then an old military fort to China, so long as it didn't interfere with Britain's rule of Hong Kong colony. Britain had twice defeated China on land and by sea. It was a superior military power, but hundreds of millions of Chinese were just across the border, while British reinforcements were far away.
This was a way to beef up the Chinese presence, both in the administrative and the military sense. One thing after another, the British decided that it was not a good idea to let the Kowloon Walled City remain under Chinese jurisdiction. So despite the fact that the British forced the Chinese officials and the soldiers to leave, as far as the Beijing government was concerned, it had never agreed to this arrangement. But in fact, each sort of kept their hands off the place.
After Mao Zedong's communists took control of mainland China in 1949, violent political movements became the norm. Hundreds of thousands of refugees poured across the border in the first 3 decades of communist rule. Their first stop was often the Kowloon walled city. Many sought just a roof over their heads. Others, though, brought their professions and their vices with them.
Was that drugs? Opium. Form a triad. Opium houses, okay. Probably should be reading this out for the audio listeners. Just talking about his shop. Paul Tang joined the Hong Fat Shan triad gang in his teens. He was soon addicted to heroin. Rich would take the red pill, that was the most expensive. Second most expensive was opium. Opium takers looked down on heroin users because it was the cheapest but also the most toxic. So a drug addict dig out a cat's eye. Mother of 9 kids. He ate it like a longan fruit and swallowed it. It's supposed to be good for your eyes. What? When people couldn't afford heroin, they would die. The family members just moved the dead bodies to the restrooms. I suppose you couldn't bury anyone either, could you? There's like no cemeteries. Sex workers did not necessarily start to work at night. The area they stayed was dark 24 hours a day. When I was small, I wondered why some men walked into their flats. Later, I understood that those people were sex workers.
I remember sneaking into one of these doors and I saw a very old woman sitting inside. In the 60s, 70s and 80s, there were a lot of older men who were very poor. The only women that they could afford would be these very old prostitutes.
For some, the walled city was a haven for vice. For others, it was simply a home, or a chance to carry out their trade, to make money, to start a business, to begin living out their Hong Kong dream.
My father was a Chinese from Thailand. He moved to Hong Kong to work and then he went to China to marry my mom. I was born in the Cultural Revolution, and after that poverty was the norm in mainland China. So everybody who could, they would come to Hong Kong, because for those of us who live in mainland China at that time, Hong Kong was the heaven.
The Kowloon Walled City was not a slum. It was a fully functioning community. It's not a slum because the people have hope. There were a lot of doctors, qualified doctors and dentists, and from mainland China. And because of the different system, and they were not able to practice in Hong Kong.
In the 1970s, Hong Kong's economy was starting to boom. That had a knock-on effect in the walled city.
The whole side of the city was built like a birthday cake, like a self-rising cake, and up to the limit of the safety limit of the flight path, because it's close to the beginning of the runway, to Kai Tak Airport.
But it only went so far. There were daily reminders to residents of just how cut off from the colony's success they were. For a city of 33,000 people, there was only one water pump located inside its boundaries.
On a daily basis, my mom will carry the dirty laundry downstairs to one of those water stations. She will wash all the dirty clothes, she will clean it up, and then she will wash her own hair. And then on her one hand, she will carry a bucket full of clean clothes, and on the other hand, she will carry a bucket of clean water, and she will walk home.
冇啊！如果隔離鄰舍，大家感情都
Only
非常
one
好
water
咯。
source. We had a
咁
good
我記
and
得，就
what's
算
that?
我哋
The
住
fourth family sharing a
喺即係
flat.
4伙人嗰陣時咧，我對面房
The
個
father across the
家
hall
人
passed
咧，
away
因
and the
為
mother
先
had
生
to
咧
work.
係癌病走咗。
When
對
the
面
older
啲小
children
朋
got
友
off from
啲大
work,
個嗰啲去翻工咧嚇，咁佢翻到嚟
they dropped
走
by
上
our
嚟我哋
home
嗰
and
度，
asked, "Are you
食
having dinner?"
飯啊咁，係啊係啊，食
We
唔
said
食
yes.
啊？
Do you want to
咁
join
佢
us?
哋又可以食飯。
In 1991, Suen Ho came to the walled city on a Fulbright scholarship from New York. Her goal, document how the unplanned city worked.
When I first came to Wall City, I had no idea where I'm going to go. It's like a beehive. Thought the best way to do is actually to record the experience. And so I mark all the trails and then I follow my markings.
我係香港大學嘅建築學院嚟嘅。
And then just recorded all the way how one can traverse up and down and across and end on the roof. It's like a big kid jungle gym that you just discover different things as you twist and turn, and then someone will say hello to you.
In 1984, the political landscape changed. Hong Kong would be returned to China, and the colonial government decided to deal with the Kowloon walled city once and for all.
I think it was a good idea. It's one of those ideas. A bit of housekeeping. Well, why not tidy this up now as the background to the resumption of sovereignty?
On January 14, 1987, at 9 a.m., Hong Kong's colonial government announced its decision to clear and demolish the Kowloon walled city. On
So
the
that
night
was
before
87.
the first people were to leave the walled city, Suen Ho spent the night with a family.
I was there with a family of 4 generations, had the dinner at the last evening when the grandma was mopping the floor, cleaning the dishes, and her daughters were very bitter and did not want to clean up. And then the old mom said, "It has always been my home, and even though it's going to be taken away, I want it to be taken away as the way I always liked it to be, clean and neat."
Clean and neat. So technically, when Rio's
Even
in
before the city
Kowloon,
was razed, the nostalgia began.
they had like plans to knock it down.
Hong Kong.
There was something quintessentially exotic, something Hong Kong about the Kowloon walled city.
It's a rundown piece of no man's land. A bloodsport is a typical example of foreign interest, foreign eyes looking at the walled city.
Okay, USA.
Bloodsport, of course, is about MMA before MMA was cool kind of situation. Very brutal fight. So where else can this very brutal,
Yeah, definitely,
lawless
Matt.
fight take place but the walled city?
I mean, you can still see the essence of what they were going for. These
But there
tight
was a little bit of
corridors.
introduction with a handheld camera, bringing people through the alleyway of the walled city, and there was a precious footage too. There are more
Yeah, I
and
suppose
more interests
captured in
about the
films,
Kowloon
it's-
walled city. And when I do my online research, I find out that there is a group of Japanese who recreated part of the Kowloon walled city in Japan.
I reckon this was a Shenmue thing, you know, this arcade.
Tokyo recreated Kowloon walled city. Details of the walled city were reproduced with months of research.
You've got
Even the
Space Harrier.
garbage was imported from Hong Kong to scatter on tin roofs.
This is such a cool place. This isn't there now either. This has been shut down.
Ichiro Yoshida found cheap rent in the walled city as an exchange student from Japan. He lived there for 4 months in 1985. He visits the Kowloon walled city theme park for the first time.
Theme park.
あ、これさすがにローでできてる。い やこれね、驚いたことにですね、
No
私
way.
が桐生城で住んでたアパートの階段に書いてあった落書きと同じなんですね。本当にね、それホームページで20何年前に撮った写真をアップして、
Well, that's probably the
15年ぐらい
inspiration,
前
isn't
から
it?
ホームページで公開してるんですけ
It's
ども、
crazy.
その写真とそっくり同じ落書きを再現したという25年前にあった桐生城のアパートに。
What a shame, like, that you put this much effort into this arcade and then it's not there anymore.
While those outside of Hong Kong still celebrate the high-rise urban village's mystique, its legacy here in Hong Kong is less clear. Where building walls once rose 14 stories high, there's
Is there
now a
Kowloon map in
manicured park.
Call of Duty?
Only the original Yamen, the Chinese courthouse at the walled city's center, was preserved. For many in Hong Kong, the walled city was a shameful problem, a historical quirk many would choose to forget. Some lament the near absolute erasure of the Kowloon walled city.
So not only is it a piece of architecture that is representative or archetypal of its genre, it is also a symbolic place of resistance.
In my dream, I always dream about coming back to the walled city. That was very strange. In the dream, I will always find myself walking through the alleys, go into Daijiangai, turn left into Segonggai, and then walk up to the buildings that I lived. I still remember the families on different floors. I don't know why. In my dreams, I always come back.
In many ways, the Kowloon walled city's enterprising, laissez-faire society formed a cornerstone for the modern, prosperous Hong Kong you see today. But what will happen to its stories of survival, resourcefulness, and hard work? Will they live on through the generations, or will they be sanitized and erased as completely as the walled city itself?
Really good little documentary, that. It's crazy. Shenmue definitely, like you said, Matt, definitely made it a lot wider, and it looks nicer actually in Shenmue, considering it is this sort of seedy underbelly of a city. This looks like very dark, grimy. Oh, there's the staircase that leads to the rooftop. Landy's helicopter up here. It's kind of like that in the anime, actually, isn't it? Where it comes through the ground. Awesome. Yeah, I can't believe, like, were they forced to live in that environment? Could they not come out of the Kowloon walled city and, you know, find anywhere else to live? Was it a money factor, or those that refused to leave didn't get paid and had their homes destroyed? DL. I would have liked to have, like, seen it for real. I know it kind of is still there, but it's just sort of the remains of it and that model. So what was that sheep? Were they offered 380k? Crazy, man. Yeah, you definitely take that rather than your house is going to get knocked down anyway. You must go to Kowloon. On average, residents received around 380k for their individual flats. Negotiations progressed over several years, and by November 1991 only 457 households were still to agree terms. By that time, most of the 33,000 residents had moved out. Some, however, clung on to the end, and on July 2nd, 1992, riot police entered the city and forced out the remaining residents. Crazy, man. I mean, it's a shame for the people that really did love the area, I guess. But I can't see how it would have continued to function in that state. In video game terms, how crazy is it? You go from Kowloon to this, so you've gone from like that disgusting, tightly packed Kowloon walled city to like this serenity of like green, blue skies, flowers, butterflies. So that was 8,800 flats, right? So 457 didn't accept. Hong Kong dollars, yeah. I don't know what the ratio is. Don't forget about inflation. Look at these mountain tops, man. You know, it's crazy. These tops of these mountains, I bet, like, potentially no one's ever stepped foot on just because of the shape of them. You'd have to do some like crazy climbing just to stand on top of one of these mountains. Okay, I take it back. Someone has stood on the top of one of these mountains.
For more, tune into Shenmue Dojo's Shenmue Lore Investigation streams. Airing live on Shenmue Dojo's YouTube and Twitch channels every other Friday at 9 p.m. BST. Let's get sweaty.